The morning started like any other aboard the human starship U.S. Liberator. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the metal corridors, his boots making soft sounds on the deck plates. The ship hummed with quiet energy as it traveled through the darkness between stars. Jake had been captain for 3 years now. He loved every moment of commanding this massive vessel. The Liberator was huge, almost 2 kilometers long and built like a fortress. Its thick armor could stop most weapons, and its guns could punch holes through mountains. Other species in the galaxy thought human ships looked crude and ugly, but Jake knew better. Earth ships were built to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Jake entered the bridge where his crew worked, at their stations. The bridge was dimly lit with blue and green lights from the computer screens. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes sat at the communications station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she monitored radio signals from across the galaxy. "Good morning, Captain," Lisa said without looking up from her screen. "Quiet night." Merchant ships reporting their positions and a few diplomatic messages between the core worlds. Jake nodded and settled into his command chair. He liked quiet mornings. They gave him time to think and plan. The Fourth Fleet was on patrol duty in the Outer Rim, keeping watch for pirates and smugglers. It was peaceful work, but Jake sometimes missed the excitement of exploration missions. The peace ended when every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Lisa's hands flew over her controls as emergency signals flooded her station. Her face went pale as she read the incoming messages. "Captain, we have multiple distress calls coming in from the Colliery system. They're broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." Jake sat up straight. The Colliery were good people, peaceful scientists, and traders who had been friends with humanity for 15 years. They lived in a small group of star systems, about 300 light-years from Earth. Jake had visited their worlds twice and found them to be kind and generous hosts. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The front view screen flickered to life, showing the desperate face of a Colliery diplomat. The alien looked like a tall, thin human with blue skin and large silver eyes. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by obvious fear. "This is Ambassador Vell of the Colliery Confederation," the alien said, his voice shaking. "We are under attack by the Vorthan Empire. They have invaded our space with over 200 warships. Our defense forces have been destroyed. Our worlds are being bombarded. We request immediate military assistance from any friendly government." The message repeated several times before cutting to static. Jake stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. The Vorthans were bad news, a warrior empire that had been expanding across the galaxy for decades. They were known for their brutality and their powerful fleet. "Lisa, get me Admiral Blake at Earth Command immediately," Jake ordered. Within minutes, Admiral Peter Blake's weathered face appeared on the screen. The old admiral had gray hair and scars from his days as a young officer, fighting pirates in the asteroid belt. His expression was grim as he spoke. "Morrison, I assume you've seen the Colliery distress call?" "Yes, sir. What are your orders?" Blake leaned forward in his chair. "The Colliery have been our trading partners and friends for 15 years. They've shared their medical knowledge with us and helped our colonies establish trade routes. We won't abandon them now." Jake felt a surge of pride. This was why he loved serving in the human fleet. "You're to take the Fourth Fleet and render assistance immediately," Blake continued. "I'm authorizing you to use any force necessary to protect Colliery civilians and drive off the Vorthon invasion." "Understood, sir." Blake smiled grimly. "Son, you've got 12 heavy cruisers, 24 destroyers, and the most powerful dreadnought in human space. If that's not enough, then we're all in trouble." The connection ended, and Jake turned to his crew. They were all watching him with expectant faces. These men and women had trained for years for moments like this. They were ready. "Lieutenant Hayes, signal all ships in the fleet. We're going to help our friends." Lisa's fingers flew over her controls as she sent the message to the other ships, spread across the patrol area, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. Jake stood on his bridge and looked out at the assembled fleet. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built in the orbital shipyards around Earth and Luna. They were designed by people who understood that the universe was a dangerous place and that sometimes good people needed protection from bullies. The Vorthons thought they could attack peaceful people without consequences. They were about to learn that the galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer a small species hiding on the edge of known space. They had ships, they had weapons, and they had the will to use them. Navigation. Plot a course for the Kalari system. Maximum speed, Jake ordered. Course plotted, sir. Took a deep breath.
Ow.
In a few hours, his fleet would drop out of hyperspace in an enemy-controlled system. They would be outnumbered almost 6 to 1 by ships that were bigger and supposedly more advanced than anything humanity had built. But Jake wasn't worried. The Vorthines had never fought humans before. They had never faced ships built by people, who lived on a world where everything tried to kill them. They had never encountered weapons designed by engineers who understood that sometimes you had to break things to protect what mattered. The galaxy called Earth a death world, and its people Deathworlders. Other species thought this made humans weak or primitive. They were about to discover their mistake. All ships report ready for jump, sir, the navigation officer announced. Jake looked around his bridge one more time. His crew was calm and professional, ready for whatever they might face. These were Earth's children, raised under heavy gravity and harsh conditions that would kill most aliens. They were tough, smart, and absolutely determined to help their friends. Execute jump, Jake commanded. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the human fleet entered hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The Kalari had called for help, and the Deathworlders had launched a fleet. The human fleet traveled through hyperspace for 6 hours before reaching the edge of Kalari territory. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberator, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around him, his crew worked quietly. At their stations, checking weapons and shields one final time. 30 seconds to normal space, announced Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez from the navigation station. Jake opened a communication channel to all ships in the fleet. All vessels. This is Morrison. We don't know what we'll find when we drop out of hyperspace. The Vorthons might be waiting for us. Stay sharp and be ready for anything. The timer reached 0, and the stars stopped streaking past the viewports. The human fleet had arrived at the Kalari system, but what they saw made everyone on the bridge go silent. 3 beautiful blue and green worlds hung in space ahead of them, but they were surrounded by destruction. Burning space stations drifted like dying stars, their metal frames twisted and broken. Debris fields marked the spots where Kalari defense ships had made their last stands. And everywhere, sleek gray warships with the red markings of the Vorthon Empire patrolled like hungry sharks. Jesus, whispered Lisa Hayes at the communications station. There must be 200 of them. Jake studied the tactical display that showed enemy ship positions. The Vorthons had arranged themselves in a classic siege formation around the 3 Kalari worlds. Their heavy battleships bombarded the planets, while smaller cruisers hunted down any surviving Kalari vessels trying to escape. Captain, called out Lieutenant Sam Parker from the sensor station, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the planet surfaces. The Vorthons are hitting population centers. Jake's hands tightened into fists. The Vorthons weren't just conquering the Kalari worlds, they were trying to wipe out the entire population. This wasn't war. This was genocide. Lisa, any word from Kalari Command? Lisa shook her head sadly. Nothing from their military frequencies? I'm picking up some civilian broadcasts, but they're scattered and weak. Most of their communication networks have been destroyed. Across the fleet, other human captains were seeing the same horrible scene. Captain Amy Rodriguez of the heavy cruiser Phoenix stood in her command center, her jaw clenched as she watched Vorthon ships rain fire on defenseless cities below. Ma'am, said her weapons officer, Lieutenant Ben Taylor, their formation puts them between us and the planets. We'll have to go through them to reach any survivors. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Then that's what we'll do. Ready all weapons and prepare for close combat. The Phoenix was one of humanity's newest heavy cruisers, built specifically for ship-to-ship fighting. Unlike the elegant curves favored by most galactic civilizations, the Phoenix looked like a flying fortress. Its hull was covered in thick armor plates designed to stop the most powerful weapons. And its gun turrets could rotate to fire in any direction. Commander Rick Thompson of the Destroyer Raptor was having similar thoughts as he prepared his smaller but faster ship for battle. The Raptor carried experimental railguns that fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. Most alien species considered kinetic weapons primitive, but humans had learned that sometimes the old ways worked best. Engineering, how are our rail guns? Rick asked over the intercom. All 4 guns charged and ready, sir, came the reply from Chief Engineer Nancy Davis. We've got enough ammunition for extended combat. These Vorthins won't know what hit them. Back on the Liberator, Jake was forming his battle plan. Human fleet was outnumbered 6-1, but they had some advantages the enemy didn't know about. Human ships were built tougher than anything else in the galaxy, designed by people who understood that space was trying to kill you every second of every day. Martinez, take us closer to the enemy formation. Signal the fleet to form up. In attack formation Delta? Sir, that will put us well within their weapons range, Martinez warned. Jake smiled coldly. That's the idea. Human ships fight best up close where our armor and guns give us the advantage. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Karen White, pulled up the enemy formation on her screen. Captain, the Vorthins are using standard galactic battle doctrine. Long-range energy weapons, overlapping shield coverage, and coordinated fire patterns. Good, Jake replied. That means they're not ready for what we're about to do. The human fleet began moving toward the enemy in a formation that would have horrified military strategists from other species. Instead of maintaining safe distances and trying to outmaneuver their opponents, the humans were charging straight at the Vorthin lines like ancient cavalry. Admiral Korath of the Vorthin Empire watched the approaching human ships from his command vessel, the massive battleship destroyer of worlds. The alien admiral had 4 arms and a face like an angry insect, with compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums of light. What are these primitive ships doing? Korath asked his tactical officer. Their formation makes no tactical sense. Sub-Commander Rex studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. Sir, they appear to be from the human colony in the Sol system. Our intelligence files classify them as a minor species from a death world. Their technology level is considered significantly below galactic standards. Korath's mandibles clicked. In amusement? Deathworlders playing at war with their crude metal ships. This will provide some entertainment before we finish with the Kalari. But as the human fleet drew closer, something began to bother the Vorthon commander. The human ships didn't look right. They were too angular, too heavily armored, and covered with weapon mounts that seemed designed for close-range combat. Most disturbing of all, they weren't slowing down as they approached. Sub-Commander, what is the normal engagement range for galactic naval combat? Approximately 50,000 kilometers, sir. This allows for proper maneuvering and shield coordination. Korath looked at his display again. The humans were now within 30,000 kilometers and still accelerating. Are their navigation systems malfunctioning? Before Rex could answer, the lead human ship, a massive dreadnought, opened fire. But instead of the expected energy beams, solid projectiles shot out of its guns at tremendous speed. The metal slugs punched through Vorthin shields like they weren't even there and tore huge holes in the armor of 2 enemy cruisers. Impossible, Korath whispered. Their weapons are kinetic. How can primitive projectiles penetrate our shields? The answer was simple, though the Vorthins didn't understand it yet. Human engineers had studied galactic shield technology and realized that it was designed to stop energy weapons. Solid objects moving fast enough could pass right through the energy barriers that protected alien ships. More human ships opened fire as the 2 fleets closed to point-blank range. The space between them filled with railgun slugs, missiles, and laser beams as the largest naval battle in decades began. Jake watched his tactical display as human ships tore into the Vorthon formation. The enemy had expected a civilized long-range duel fought according to established rules. Instead, they were getting a brutal close-quarters brawl, where human armor and weapons gave his people a decisive advantage. All ships engage at will, Jake commanded. Show these bullies what happens when they threaten our friends. The Battle of Kolari Prime had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first exchange of fire shocked everyone on both sides of the battle. Human railgun slugs tore through Vorthon shields and armor like paper, while the enemy's energy weapons splashed harmlessly against human deflector screens designed specifically to stop laser and plasma fire. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Liberator as his main guns fired again. 8 tungsten penetrator rounds shot out at nearly the speed of light, crossing the space between fleets in seconds. They struck a Vorthon heavy cruiser in the center of its hull, punching completely through the ship and out the other side. The enemy vessel broke in half, its crew compartments venting atmosphere into the void. "Direct hit on Target 7, reported Lieutenant Karen White from the weapons station. Enemy vessel destroyed." But Jake had no time to celebrate. Warning alarms filled the bridge as a squadron of Vorthon fighters dove toward the Liberator, their plasma cannons blazing. The small ships were fast and maneuverable, designed to swarm larger vessels and overwhelm their defenses. "Point defense systems engage those fighters," Jake ordered. The Liberator's surface came alive with automated gun turrets that tracked the incoming targets. Unlike the elegant energy weapons used by most galactic navies, the human point defense guns fired old-fashioned bullets at incredible rates. Thousands of metal slugs filled the space around the dreadnought, creating a wall of death that no small craft could survive. The Vorthon fighters exploded one by one as they flew into the defensive fire. Their pilots had never encountered weapons that fired solid projectiles, and their evasion tactics were useless against the storm of bullets coming their way. Across the battlefield, Captain Amy Rodriguez was having her own problems aboard the heavy cruiser Phoenix. 3 Vorthon battleships had surrounded her vessel and were pouring fire into her shields. The energy barriers flickered and sparked under the assault, threatening to fail at any moment. "Shields down to 30%, called out her engineering officer, Lieutenant Commander Dale Murphy. "We can't take much more of this." They were maintaining a safe distance while they pounded her defenses, following standard galactic naval doctrine. But Rodriguez had been born and raised on Earth, where safe distances didn't exist, and you had to fight with everything you had. "All hands brace for ramming speed," she announced over the ship's intercom. Her crew looked at her with surprise, but they quickly strapped themselves into their seats. Rodriguez had trained them well, and they trusted her judgment even when her orders seemed crazy. The Phoenix suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest Vorthon battleship. The enemy commander saw the human ship approaching and increased his fire. "Ma'am, collision in 10 seconds, warned the navigation officer. The impact threw both crews around like toys, but the human ship had been built to survive crashes and collisions. The Vorthon vessel hadn't. Rodriguez picked herself up from the deck and looked at the main screen. The enemy battleship was breaking apart around them, its structural supports failing under the stress of the collision. "Back us out of there and find another target." Meanwhile, Commander Rick Thompson of the destroyer Raptor was demonstrating another advantage of human military thinking. His small ship was outnumbered by a squadron of Vorthon cruisers, but instead of trying to run or fight a conventional battle, he had decided to get creative. "Take us into that debris field," Rick ordered his helmsman. "Use the wreckage for cover." The Raptor dove between the broken remains of destroyed Kolari space stations, weaving through twisted metal and floating chunks of armor. The larger Vorthon ships tried to follow, but their bulky designs weren't meant for such tight maneuvering. "Sir, we've got a clear shot at their lead cruiser," announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the weapons station. Rick smiled. "Fire all railguns. Give them a taste of human engineering." 4 metal slugs shot out from the Raptor's guns, each one weighing as much as a small car and moving fast enough to punch through a mountain. They struck the Vorthon cruiser's engine section, causing a massive explosion that lit up the debris. "Field like a new star." Back on the Liberator, Jake was watching the overall battle develop. The human fleet was outnumbered, but their superior armor and weapons were evening the odds. More importantly, the Vorthons were starting to panic. They had never faced an enemy that fought like humans did. Captain called out Lisa Hayes from communications. "I'm intercepting Vorthon military transmissions." Their admiral is demanding to know why their weapons aren't working properly. The Vorthons had spent centuries perfecting their energy weapons and shield technology. They had never encountered an enemy that used kinetic weapons as their primary armament. Jake ordered, "Continue the attack. Don't give them time to adapt." Admiral Korath of the Vorthan Empire was indeed panicking as he watched his fleet fall apart around him. Half of his ships had been destroyed or crippled, while the human vessels seemed to shrug off damage that should have vaporized them. "How are they surviving our weapons?" he demanded of his science officer. "Sir, their armor appears to be much thicker than our projections indicated, and their defensive systems are designed specifically to counter energy weapons. It's as if they built their entire fleet to fight us." Korath stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans were supposed to be primitives from a backwater world. How could they have superior military technology? The truth was that humans didn't have superior technology. They just had a different approach to warfare. While other species focused on elegant solutions and efficient designs, humans built everything to survive the worst possible conditions. Their ships were armored fortresses because they came from a world where everything was trying to kill them. The battle raged for 12 more hours as the two fleets hammered each other across the Kaleri system. Human ships continued their brutal close-range tactics. Damaged to withdraw from the main battle, Commander Thompson's Raptor had destroyed 4 cruisers before a lucky shot disabled its engines. But for every human ship that was damaged, 3 Vorthon vessels were completely destroyed as dawn broke over Kaleri Prime. The largest planet in the system, Admiral Korath, made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Looking at the wreckage of his once mighty fleet, he gave the order that no Vorthon commander had ever given before: "We withdraw from this engagement." The surviving Vorthon vessels began to flee, their crews traumatized by their encounter with the Deathworlders. They had come to the Kaleri system expecting an easy conquest. "Threatens your friends, you hit back twice as hard." Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Around him, his crew cheered and celebrated their victory. They had saved the Kaleri worlds and shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread across the galaxy, and everything would change. The age of human dominance in space had begun. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kaleri Prime, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. Hearing Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Liberator, reading the latest intelligence reports from Earth Command. The Vorthon Empire had officially announced a ceasefire with the Kaleri Confederation and agreed to pay massive reparations for the damage they had caused. More importantly, they had recalled all their fleets to their home territories and canceled 3 planned invasions of neighboring systems. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. "Captain, we're getting reports from all over the galaxy. The hegemony just canceled their expansion into the TOA sector. The Crimson Fleet pirates have abandoned their base in the asteroid fields near Rigel, even the Syndicate." He had expected something like this would happen. When bullies realized there was someone stronger, willing to fight back, they usually found somewhere else to cause trouble. "Any word from the Kaleri government?" he asked. Lisa smiled. "Ambassador Vell sends his thanks every day." On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez was monitoring long-range sensors when he detected something interesting. "Captain Morrison to the bridge, please." Jake arrived to find his crew gathered around the sensor station, looking at readings from the edge of the system. "What do you have, Martinez?" "Sir, we're detecting multiple ships approaching from the direction of the core worlds. Configuration suggests they're from the Galactic Council fleet." Jake raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council rarely sent warships anywhere, preferring to handle conflicts through diplomacy and economic pressure. "How many ships?" 12 vessels, sir. All flying diplomatic flags and requesting permission to enter the system." An hour later, Jake found himself in the Liberator's main conference room, facing a delegation of aliens representing the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The Council's lead representative was Speaker Zeth, a tall, graceful being with silver skin and large blue eyes that seemed to see everything. "Captain Morrison," Speaker Zeth began, his voice musical and pleasant, The Galactic Council wishes to express its gratitude for your intervention in the Kalari crisis. Your actions prevented a humanitarian disaster. Jake nodded politely. We were just helping our friends, Speaker Zeth. Any civilized species would have done the same. The alien delegates exchanged glances. Several of them looked uncomfortable, and Jake wondered what they were really here to discuss. Speaker Zeth continued. The Council is also very interested in learning more about human military capabilities. The reports from this battle are quite extraordinary. What would you like to know? Jake asked carefully. A small, furry alien named Counselor Crix leaned forward. Captain, our military analysts have studied the sensor recordings from the battle. They cannot understand how your weapons were able to penetrate Vorthan's shields so easily. Their defensive systems are considered among the best in the galaxy. Jake almost smiled. The galaxy's military experts had spent so much time perfecting energy weapons that they had forgotten about simpler solutions. We use kinetic projectiles, Counselor. Metal slugs fired at very high speeds. Your shields are designed to stop energy. Weapons, not solid objects. Speaker Zeth raised a hand for silence. Captain, the Council would like to make you an offer. We would be honored if humanity would consider joining our peacekeeping forces. Your unique military approach could be very valuable in maintaining galactic stability. The offer was tempting, but he knew that humanity wasn't ready to become the galaxy's police force. I appreciate the offer, Speaker, but humans prefer to choose our own battles. We'll help our friends when they're in trouble, but we're not interested in conquering anyone or enforcing galactic law. After the Council delegation left, Jake stood on the bridge watching their ships disappear into hyperspace. He knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer an unknown species hiding on the edge of civilized space. They were now a major power, and that came with both opportunities and responsibilities. Over the following months, the effects of the Battle of Kalari Prime continued to ripple across the galaxy. The Vorthan Empire, once the most feared military force in known space, found itself isolated as former allies distanced themselves from the defeated aggressors. Other aggressive species began reconsidering their expansion plans, knowing that someone might call the humans for help. But perhaps the most significant change was in how distress calls were answered. When the mining colonies of New Geneva came under attack by raiders, they didn't contact the Galactic Council's slow-moving peacekeeping force. They sent a message directly to Earth. And within days, a human patrol squadron arrived to drive off the attackers. When unknown vessels began stalking research stations in the Outer Rim, the scientists didn't request Council mediation. They asked for human escorts. And suddenly, the mysterious ships disappeared. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. These weren't just another species that had somehow managed to survive on a dangerous world. They were Deathworlders, who had turned survival into an art form. And when their friends called for help, they didn't send diplomats or negotiators. They launched a fleet. Admiral Peter Blake sat in his office at Earth Command, reviewing reports from across human space. The Fourth Fleet was back on patrol, but now they were joined by ships from a dozen other species who wanted human protection. Trade was booming, as merchants felt safe to travel under human escort. Colony worlds that had been abandoned due to pirate attacks were being resettled. A communication alert chimed, and Blake activated his screen to see Captain Morrison's face. Admiral, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the Andrian system. Long-range sensors show hegemony battle. Cruisers moving toward their colonies. The hegemony had been testing human resolve for weeks, making small aggressive moves to see how humanity would respond. They were making a bigger play, probably hoping that humans wouldn't fight for colonies so far from Earth. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Morrison, take the Fourth Fleet and render assistance. Show the hegemony that distance doesn't matter when our friends need help. Understood, sir? We'll jump in 10 minutes. Blake cut the connection and leaned back in his chair. Office window, he could see the orbital shipyards where new vessels were being built around the clock. Human engineers were already working on improved designs. Incorporating lessons learned from the Kalari battle, the galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading that change. They had proven that good people didn't have to be victims, that bullies could be stopped. and that sometimes the best diplomacy came from the barrel of a railgun, as the human fleet prepared to answer another call for help. Their message was clear to anyone watching: in a galaxy full of predators, there was now an apex predator. It protected its friends. The age of humanity had truly begun.